Israeli government policies aren't the only ways racism against Palestinians shows up. Here are 7 examples. Dehumanizing Palestinians is racism. Palestinians are human beings, and we shouldn't have to keep reminding people of this. Dehumanizing Palestinians includes the obvious stereotyping. Palestinians are diverse people with many different experiences, and when we're treated like we're all the same, it strips us of our humanity. Dehumanization also includes blaming us for Israel's systemic oppression and violence against us. You might know that as victim blaming.
Do you support the protests, the violent protests that have erupted in solidarity with you and other families in your position right now?
Do you support the violent dispossession of me and my family?
And it's also dehumanizing to treat us differently than you would treat anyone else, to suggest we don't want or need the same things everyone else does. Freedom and safety, a place to call home, to be together with our families. And yeah, all this might seem super obvious, but it happens all the time. In TV and film, in the media, in college classrooms and textbooks, and on Capitol Hill. It's also racist when Palestinians are told to accept their oppression. Palestinians are entitled to freedom, but time and again, we're told we have to wait. Palestinians shouldn't be expected to accept oppression when no one else would either. Here's a big one: denying Palestinian history. Palestinians were massacred, their villages and homes destroyed, and nearly 1 million Palestinians were forced off their land when Israel was created in 1948. We call this the Nakba, or catastrophe in Arabic. So just so you know what this means, my parents, like many Palestinians, were born in Palestine before Israel existed. And to this day, Israel won't allow them to live in or even freely visit their birthplaces. To understand where we are today, we have to acknowledge these historical facts. When people deny the truth of this history, they're erasing an entire people's experience. Censoring and smearing Palestinians for speaking about who they are and about their experiences is a form of racism against Palestinians. Palestinians of all backgrounds, including artists, activists, academics, and journalists, are frequently censored, bullied, smeared, and even fired for speaking about being Palestinian. When we're denied the freedom to speak about who we are and what our experiences are, it's an attack on our identity as a people. And Palestinians shouldn't be intimidated for speaking up about their lives. When Palestinian culture and identity are erased, that's racism. Palestinians have a unique and distinct culture connected to their homeland, and denying that connection erases Palestinian existence. We've been forced off the land our families have lived on for generations, and it's even more painful when our culture and traditions are taken from us too. So when Israel steals Palestinian music, clothing, and food, and labels it as Israeli, they're erasing Palestinian culture and the people who created it. Racism against Palestinians also looks like rejecting Palestinians' right to self-defense. All people have the right to self-defense, but when Palestinians resist Israel's brutal oppression and defend themselves against Israel's systemic violence, they're often falsely portrayed as the aggressor. There are many examples of racism against Palestinians, but the last one for this video is when Palestinians are prevented from determining their own futures. Palestinians should have the power to lead conversations about Palestinian lives and futures, and we should have the power to make decisions about policies that affect our lives. Sounds obvious and simple enough, but far too often we're excluded from these spaces and conversations. We should be treated like the experts we are. Racism against Palestinians is often overlooked, but like all forms of racism, should be taken seriously. Teach your friends, your families, and your peers about it. And know that while each form of oppression is unique, the same systems harm us all. Together, we can build a world where everyone experiences freedom and justice.